Yeah, Taoiseach, we need a referendum on the right to housing. I submitted a bill to that effect, looking to change Article 43 of the Constitution to delimit the rights of private property in order to vindicate the right to affordable, dignified and appropriate housing for all in the last couple of weeks. And I believe you should support that bill and fast-track the move towards a referendum. The scandal of land hoarding and sitting on empty buildings was an absolute outrage prior to COVID, but now it is absolutely unjustifiable. I'll just give you an example of why this is important. I met a woman who I'd say was in her 80s on South Great Georgia Street. And she pulled me aside. This was during the height of the lockdown. She pulled me aside and she said, I want you to walk up Ainger Street and look at a block on Ainger Street, and you will see the absolute disgrace of a line of houses sitting empty, of buildings sitting empty for a decade at least, that could be used to house people in our area, where there's desperate overcrowding, huge numbers of people on housing lists in the south inner city. I heard today from a social worker, just met on the street on the way in, who works in that area. There's been a COVID outbreak there today. Okay? And he pointed out that his community centre, where actually social distancing was possible, is now going to close down because property developers want to develop the site. Okay? Now, in that little microcosm, you have the problem. Private property ownership by landlords or developers or speculators preventing the development of sites that could be used for housing in an area where there's chronic overcrowding in the social housing and lack of social housing. That property should just be taken by the state to provide the housing that people need in the area. Instead, it's sitting there taunting people who are now suffering the situation of COVID outbreaks. And what are they supposed to do if they're in an overcrowded housing situation, where 2 or 3 generations, as is happening all over the place, are living cheek by jowl? How do they socially distance or self-isolate in a situation where there's COVID? So we need aggressive action, and the Constitution needs to be changed to say private property rights cannot trump the need for immediate action to take that property, refurbish it and provide housing for people who need it, so they don't have to live in overcrowded and now effectively dangerous from a health point of view conditions.
First of all, I say that what's needed in housing is immediate action to get more people housed, to get more houses built, and particularly to get homelessness numbers down. Now, COVID-19 is having an impact. It will have an impact on the timing of referendums. Let's be clear about that. And also, it's had an impact in the early part of this year on house completions because of the lockdown and so on nationally. But that said, in the July stimulus programme, for example, we provided additional resources to get 2,500 voids filled and accelerated to get those, repaired back into operation for people on the waiting lists. And that's the type of proactive, quick measures designed to get things moving in relation to housing. We believe we need an affordable housing scheme to enable people who have a genuine aspiration to buy a house to be in a position to do so. And that's something that's been worked on in detail by the Minister. The Minister is working very actively in relation to the homeless situation and is in constant contact with all of the non-government agencies and organisations who work so hard and diligently in relation to the homeless issue. And that will continue. In terms of the constitutional referendum on housing, the government is pursuing that, but there's greater detailed consideration needed for such a proposal before it can be put to the electorate, and to give specific timelines in relation to it. But the programme for government does commit to holding a referendum on housing. In relation to land prices, there are a number of measures that can be taken short of a constitutional referendum in the first instance to penalise land hoarding and to make it yes, I mean, Minister Kelly was a minister.
I brought in the legislation.
Yeah, but you didn't bring in the referendum. you didn't bring in any proposals for a referendum on housing. So I know, but you will be well aware of, and by the way, we're committed to bringing in a referendum. And there's been, as you know, there's been an internal, there's bills everywhere. But there is an ongoing debate in terms of can we get things done through legislation and also through various taxation measures to reduce the incentive to hoard land and to make it punitive and to create a punitive environment for the hoarding of land and to reduce the acceleration of land prices, and that is the objective of government in that regard. And the programme for government is the outcome of negotiations between 3 political parties, and it's clear in terms of its commitments. But we are committed to dealing with the land cost issue, and obviously the Land and Development Agency legislation is under consideration by government right now, with a view to publication later in the year. Could I also ask in terms of, respond on the issue of the voting referendum that's on presidential voting rights for those living outside the state. Now, the government has recently restored the 39th Amendment of the Constitution, that's the Presidential Elections Bill, to the Dáil order and paper. The date for holding of the referendum again will be decided once that legislation is approved by the Oireachtas. And obviously, as I said earlier, the public health implications of COVID may, of course, impact on the timelines for such a referendum. The Deputy is correct. It was the 5th report of the Convention on the Constitution which supports an extension of the right to vote at presidential elections to citizens residents outside of the state, including citizens resident in Northern Ireland, and recommended that referendum be held to amend the Constitution to provide for that extended franchise. The Programme for Government agrees with that, and as you know, there was the publication of an options paper in 2017, which was quite comprehensive and set out a broad range of options for the extension of voting rights, international comparisons, the estimated costs involved, related resource issues, as well as many of the legal, policy, administrative and logistical challenges associated with extending voting rights to Irish citizens resident outside of the state. So a referendum commission was indeed established by order of the Minister of Housing and Planning and Local Government in September of 2019 to inform the electorate about the subject matter of the bill, subject to it passing both houses of the Oireachtas. And I think you're familiar with the bill. It provides for the replacement of the existing Articles 12.2.2 and 12.3.3 of the Constitution, as well as for the insertion of a new Article 12a in the Constitution. And those amendments then would extend the right to vote for the office of President to all citizens, not solely to those who are ordinarily resident in the state, as is currently the case, for elections held on or after January 2025, which would be the beginning of the year in which the next scheduled election for the office of President would fall due.